Forbes has released a rather very interesting insight report that tells you exactly how much the Indiana Fever's social media engagements are actually monetarily worth, either on X or YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, whatever. I mean, all these posts have a monetary value to them based on engagement.
Okay, this is wild. The Indiana Fever's social media just got slapped with a $55 million valuation. And get this, second place isn't even in the same zip code. Forbes just dropped a report that has every single hater out there scrambling for excuses. But let me tell you, the numbers don't lie. While everyone was busy arguing about who really matters in the WNBA, the cold hard data just crashed the party and settled it in the most brutal way imaginable. Seriously, do you think one player can actually be worth this much to a franchise's social media value? Drop your thoughts below, because we need to cut through all the noise and talk about what just happened here. This Forbes report, it's basically a nuclear bomb that just blew up every single argument the old guard WNBA fans have been spewing for months. The Indiana Fever's social media is officially valued at a mind-blowing $55.4 million. That's not a typo. That's not an exaggeration. That's what happens when you draft someone who actually moves the needle in ways this league has never witnessed before.
If you are a Caitlin Clark fan, if you're an Indiana Fever fan, this is something you already know. However, for the haters out there, the old WNBA fandom, many of you call them the slows, for those fans, they're in complete denial. We've tried to tell people Caitlin Clark moves the needle unlike anybody else in this league or everybody else in this league. It just sort of is what it is. Fans are coming to see one particular player, and along with that carries over the support to the entire team.
Now, before anyone starts crying foul, claiming this is disrespectful to other players, or that we should just celebrate everyone equally, pump the brakes. We're talking about cold, hard, undeniable numbers here. This isn't just some random opinion. This isn't biased. What we have here is a legitimate, rigorous study by STN Digital and Zoom Analytics that tracked over 20,000 pieces of content across Instagram, X, Facebook, and YouTube for the entire season. They meticulously measured impressions, engagements, and even calculated what it would actually cost advertisers to get that same level of exposure through paid ads. And the result? The Fever didn't just win. They came out on top by a margin so absolutely massive. It's honestly almost embarrassing for literally everyone else in the league.
They're worth a lot of money. They are worth a lot of money, and I can tell you right now, that's a little over 5 times higher than the next WNBA team. 5 times higher. Let's go down here. Just scroll down. The Indiana Fever's staggering $55 million social media evaluation speaks volumes.
All right, so check this out. Second place in this whole social media valuation thing went to the Dallas Wings, clocking in at $8.61 million. Now, let that just sink in for a second. The gap between first and second place, we're talking over 40. That's not just not a competitive race. That's not even the same sport at this point. The Fever aren't just ahead. They're playing a completely different game with numbers that nobody else can even touch. And here's the kicker. The Wings actually had an incredible year themselves, with engagement up 505% and social value up a staggering 344%. Yet they still got absolutely demolished by the sheer size of that gap. Third place went to the Las Vegas Aces at $7.64 million. Which makes sense, right? They're the dynasty team, multiple championships, star power galore. Fourth was the New York Liberty at $7.54 million, which also tracks because they're in the biggest media market in the entire country. But here's where it gets really interesting. Fifth place, that went to the Chicago Sky at $6.35 million. Now, remember all those debates we had all season long about who was really bringing more attention to the league? Remember all the arguments about rookies, impact, and cultural relevance? Well, guess what? The numbers just answered that question definitively. And let me tell you, it was not particularly close. The fact that the Sky came in fifth, despite having a player who was supposed to be equally as impactful, tells you everything you need to know. The narrative all season was that there were 2 players driving WNBA growth and bringing new fans to the league. But hold up, The social media value shows a mind-boggling $48.69 million. Gap between the Fever and the Sky. That's not a small difference. That's not margin of error stuff. That's a completely different stratosphere of impact and engagement.
Noticing the growing popularity of WNBA across social media, social agency STN Digital and analytics and measurement platform Zoom teamed up to quantify the league's online impact with a newly released WNBA social rankings and insight report. The research analyzes how every team performed across social media during the 2025 season and identifies which clubs and content pieces generated the most engagement, impressions, and estimated media value.
But what makes these numbers even more brutal? Honestly, the Fever didn't even stop posting Caitlin Clark content after the season ended. They kept that engagement roaring, kept the content flowing, and kept giving fans exactly what they wanted. Reasons to interact with their social media. Look, that's just smart business. When you've got someone who generates this level of interest, you don't take your foot off the gas. You keep feeding that audience. You ride that wave as long as it possibly lasts. The study, which covered May 16th to September 11th during the season, found the Fever racked up an astounding 38.73 million engagements and a mind-blowing 1.117 billion impressions. Yeah, that's billion with a B. To put that in perspective, that's more impressions than most professional sports teams get in an entire year across all their platforms. And we're talking about the WNBA here, a league that historically struggled big time for mainstream attention. Now get this. One of the most insane stats from the report is that the Fever had a single YouTube video valued at over $733,000. Not a campaign, not a series. One single piece of content was worth $750,000 in equivalent advertising value. That's the kind of number that makes marketing execs lose their minds, because it screams how engaged and active this fan base truly is. You just don't get those numbers unless people are actually watching, sharing, commenting, and coming back for more. For context, that one video's value is higher than some WNBA team's entire social media worth for the whole season. Think about that for a second. One piece of Fever content is worth more than everything some franchises posted combined. This isn't just winning. This is absolute domination that completely changes how the entire league needs to think about social media strategy and fan engagement moving forward. You also need to understand the methodology behind these numbers. They used a social value metric, which calculates what advertisers would have to pay to get the same exposure through paid media. So, when we say the Fever's social media is worth $55 million, it means companies would have to fork over $55 million to buy that same number of impressions and engagements traditionally. The Fever, they're getting that value organically, just by posting content their fans genuinely want to see. And this, my friends, absolutely obliterates the argument that the WNBA's growth is evenly distributed, or that multiple players are equally responsible for this surge in popularity. If that were true, you'd expect much closer numbers across the top team. Instead, you have one team that's 5 times higher than second place. That's not parity. That's one player single-handedly dragging an entire franchise into relevance, and whether people want to admit it or not, taking the whole league along for the ride. Now, the Dallas Wings' massive year-over-year growth is definitely worth noting. Increasing engagement by 505% is incredible, and a lot of that is probably thanks to Sophie Cunningham's amazing social media presence and personality. She's been one of the most searched WNBA players, landing sponsorships with brands like Arby's because she knows how to market herself. But even with that explosive growth, they're still nowhere near the Fever's numbers, which just screams how far ahead Caitlin Clark's impact truly is. The fact that the Chicago Sky finished 5th is probably the most shocking revelation in this entire report for anyone who bought into the narratives being pushed all season. There was constant media coverage comparing two players, suggesting they were both equally transformative for the league. But the social media value shows a chasm of nearly $49 million. That's not a close competition. That's not even a competition at all. One player is generating engagement and value at a level that literally nobody else in the league can match. Some folks will try to argue that the Fever just had a better social media strategy or that their content team is superior. And there's probably some truth to that. STN Digital did work with them on campaign. But here's the reality. You can have the best social media team in the world, but if your players aren't interesting to fans, the content simply won't perform. The Fever's numbers are high because fans want Caitlin Clark content. They want updates, highlights, behind-the-scenes footage, anything related to her. The demand drives the supply, not the other way around. This report also finally highlights something the WNBA has been really reluctant to fully embrace. Star power matters. The league has tried to push this egalitarian message that everyone is equally important and deserves equal attention. But that's just not how sports fandom works. People connect with individual players. They buy jerseys of specific athletes. They tune in to watch particular stars perform. The sooner the WNBA accepts that and builds its marketing around its biggest stars, the faster the league will continue to grow. The Fever's social media value is also a colossal asset when attracting sponsors and negotiating partnerships. When you can show potential sponsors that your content reaches over 1 billion impressions and generates nearly 40 million engagements, you have serious leverage in those conversations. Brands want access to engaged audiences, and the Fever have proven they can deliver that at a scale no other WNBA team can match. That translates directly into revenue through sponsorships, advertising deals and partnerships. And it's also crucial to consider what this means for the Fever's future business decisions. When one player is responsible for generating this much social media value, you do absolutely whatever it takes to keep that player happy and on your roster. You build around them, you support them, you make sure they have everything they need to succeed, because losing them would be catastrophic for the franchise's bottom line. The Fever aren't just thinking about wins and losses anymore. They're thinking about engagement, impressions, social value, and all the business metrics that come with having a transcendent star. The Las Vegas Aces finishing third, despite being the defending champions with multiple All-Stars, absolutely shows that winning alone doesn't drive social media engagement. The Aces are successful on the court, but they just don't generate the same level of fan interest and content engagement as teams with more marketable personalities. That's a crucial lesson for the entire league. Championship banners are great, but they don't automatically translate to social media value and fan engagement if people aren't emotionally invested in your players. The New York Liberty being fourth is somewhat surprising, especially given they're in the largest media market in the country. You'd think being in New York would provide a massive advantage for social media growth and engagement, but location only matters if you have players and content that people genuinely care about. The Liberty are competitive and well-run, but they don't have anyone generating Caitlin Clark levels of interest, which limits their social media ceiling regardless of market size. So, what does this report really prove? It proves that the WNBA's recent growth isn't as evenly distributed as the league wants people to believe. There's one clear driver of this increased attention and engagement, and the numbers back that up in ways that absolutely cannot be argued again. The Fever's social media value is 5 times higher than second place. Their content generates billions of impressions. Individual videos are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Folks, these aren't the numbers of a league experiencing broad-based growth. Those are the numbers of one team and one player operating at a completely different level than everyone else. For fans who have been saying this all along, this report is total vindication. For people who argued that multiple players were equally responsible for the WNBA's growth, the numbers are a harsh, unavoidable reality check. And for the league itself, this should be a massive wake-up call about where the attention and value are actually coming from. You can pretend everyone matters equally if you want, but the data tells a very, very different story. The Fever's success on social media also puts massive pressure on other teams to figure out how to better engage their audiences. If one team can generate $55 million in social value while everyone else is stuck in single digits, that means there's a huge opportunity being left on the table. Other franchises need to look at what the Fever are doing, understand why it works, and find ways to create their own compelling content that truly resonates with fans. Otherwise, that gap is only going to continue to explode. This report is also critical ammunition for anyone arguing that certain players deserve higher salaries and better treatment from the league. When you can directly quantify the value someone brings to their franchise in the league through their social media impact, it becomes a lot harder to justify paying them the same as players who generate a fraction of that engagement. The WNBA's current salary structure doesn't account for individual star power and marketing value the way other leagues do, but numbers like these make it crystal clear that maybe it absolutely should. The estimated media value model used in this study is exactly how major brands and corporations think about social media ROI. They look at impressions and engagements and calculate what that exposure would cost through paid advertising. The fact that the Fever are generating $55 million in equivalent advertising value just through organic content is unbelievable from a business perspective. That's free marketing that would cost tens of millions to replicate through traditional advertising channels. So the numbers are in, and they are not up for debate anymore. Caitlin Clark isn't just moving the needle for the Indiana Fever. She is operating in a completely different universe than everyone else in terms of social media value and fan engagement. And hey, if you want to keep up with the real stories behind the numbers, hit that like button and subscribe. because we're breaking down everything the mainstream media won't.